Hello, sir. I'm Madhura Matre. I'm the host for the session today. And before you proceed ahead, I would just like to give up a small introduction. So, is it okay if I move on?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so thank you. Today, it gives me an immense pleasure to introduce our next guest speaker, Mr. Aman Mittal. Mr. Mittal is an open source enthusiast. He works at Draftbit as a technical writer. With a penchant for Node.js, React, React Native, and Expo, he has made his first open source contribution by writing a Twitter bot. His work boasts a wide range of companies such as JBL Technologies, JScrambler, Crowdbotics, and many more. Today, he is joining us from Delhi to talk about no code and a guide to using Draftbit. Sir, please proceed.
Well, thank you so much. That's the best introduction I've ever heard. Like, I can't even put it myself. Uh,
Thank you,
Hello,
sir.
people. How are you? Today, I'm going to, I'll be talking about various different things like no-code applications, GraphBit, React Native. So let's start with what GraphBit is. I'll just share my screen and we can. So instead of starting with Draftbit, let's start with no-code applications. Like no-code applications in a nutshell are just a way to build your applications, whether they are mobile applications or web applications, without writing code. So that's the main idea behind it. Uh, so basically, Draftbits allows you to write mobile applications and focus on building cross-platform applications. Like you can just build your own application using one builder interface and publish it for both iOS and Android. So this capability of cross-platforming comes from React Native, which Draftbit is based on, and how Draftbit uses on its in its code. So uh, apart from that, basically Draftbit in a nutshell is just an app building tool. You don't need to learn to know much about programming. You just need to have like an idea or an inspiration to work on something, and uh, Draftbit would help you to create applications at much faster rate. This is where no code advantages comes in. Like the biggest area of no code applications, or why no code is so much trending nowadays, is because it lets you focus on development, like reducing the development time of an application. It helps you reduce cost. It helps you reduce effort. A lot of team members can collaborate on it simultaneously, and so that increases your development speed of your application, and it also helps you focus on your core functionalities of the app. For example, if you're working on a particular screen and you want it to be tested out before producing it in the app, and instead of like spending time writing code, you can actually spend time initially on testing and focusing on those areas where you want to put emphasis on. So these are just some of the things that any no-code tool should provide. And at Draftbit, we are working since past 2 or 3 years to actually make it mainstream, such that mobile applications can be more approachable, can be more easily built. And with the help of React Native and Expo, it's quite like it's the reality right now. So like just so let's start with Draftbit and how it works. So basically, when you log in, create a new account in your Draftbit app, you are welcomed by this dashboard screen. It is called Personal Workspace, and this workspace includes all your applications or testing applications, the things you are testing out with Draftbit. This is my personal workspace. This is the dashboard screen. This is the menu navigation. This is anything that new comes with Draftbit. We are constantly updating our new some new features, some new pushes inside the app. These are some starter templates that you can reuse in your applications, or you can base your application on one of these starter templates. I'm going to show you how to use a starter template in shortly. These are some example screens. Like example screen is an individual screen. It can be a part of a starter template, and it can be a part of nothing else. Like these are just community-based screens, so you can just use them or use the idea behind them, like pick some components out and use it in your own app. It might be helpful for you in this hackathon to uh, see what how components are arranged, or how you can arrange elements in a particular mobile screen. This is Draftbit community link. This is the helpful documentation, and this is the roadmap where we discuss upcoming features and we take feedback from our community on what features they require and what features should we work on. So as I mentioned, this is the personal workspace. If you're using the starter app, you'll probably gonna get this kind of uh, icon in your personal workspace. A starter app includes a multiple set of screens uh, which are bound together to work together. Like it's like a kind of a complete application. So if you click on this, you'll be welcomed by this is the builder interface of Draftbit. I'll explain each and every component that I think would be helpful to for you to try it out in this hackathon and build your own applications. So let's start with the main navigation. So this is where all this basic elements of builder are aligned. For example, screens. If you click on screens, it will show you this the interface of what kind of screens you have, what kind of each screen is built off from components and layouts. Then you have themes. You can include different themes in your applications. For example, this current demo app is using this particular theme. Then there's the navigation structure, which you can see. Then you can bring your own REST APIs and data in your Draftbit app. Then there you can also include your own assets. Like for example, this application is using a custom logo, a custom background, a custom image. You can bring on your own fonts, and this is a settings panel where you can add app-wide app settings. For example, the name of your app, the description of your app. You can include an app icon. You can include a splash screen, change the background color, and other stuff. So let's start with the screens panel or the screens menu. So if when starting with Draftbit, you probably will get up when starting from scratch, you'll get up this blank screen uh, which contains no elements to display. So now this, like for example, this welcome screen is actually completely built. Its job is to display a logo of the app, the title of the app, the description of the app, the discover button of the app, and another button. And this is the layout panel of each screen, where you see how the components or the elements used in this screen are aligned. The component thing comes from React Native because it's basically a React ideology, because React Native is a framework that is based on React.js, and React.js is a library. Both are open source, and their philosophy is that you create a screen either in a web or mobile. You create components, and each component can be anything like an image or a title or a description, like as you can see in this screen. So it's just like the layout part is similar to HTML. Like if you might know the reference, like you're structuring your web page in a markup language like HTML with some divisions and some H1 tags and some paragraphs. So the concept is same, the ideology is same for React and React Native. It's just the components are more advanced, more aligned for a mobile application to show. So, like for example, this screen is built of different components. It has an image background, which is this background. It has a view component. It has a logo component. It has a title component, and all other components. Uh, you can add, you can add your own components. Like there are two different type of collection of components that Draftbit allows you to do. One is more low-level basic fundamentals like icon, text, view, which you can see here. There are different low-level components that you can use in your application. You can create lists, you can create buttons. Blocks are more complex level components that, for example, touchable components like buttons or a text input field or like a card or something, like you want to display something in a card. We'll see that also in shortly in this demo app, and you can use that. They are like basically using one or multiple bits based components. So these are just some high level complex components. Then there is the third type of components that you can create in your Draftbit app, which are called saved or they are called saved components or your blocks. You can actually, like, if you want to reuse this component in another screen, you can actually click here on the menu button and you can save your custom block. You can name it something which you will refer to again in later on in your app, and you can see that component and reuse it. So this is the left panel, we call it. Let's go to the screen panel. This is the where you get the interface of what you are building. So you don't like Draftbit gives you three type of views. Like this is a single screen view where you can see what you are building in a particular screen. For example, in this application, this is the welcome screen, and you can see what we have built in this welcome screen. Then you can view the multiple screens, and it will show all the screens in the application. For example, this is a second screen, which is called tutorial screen. And this is a discover book screen, which is the main app or like the home interface of this application. And there's a third type of view called preview, where you can actually render your application inside your web browser and see how the app looks like or would look like on a real mobile application. And you can actually use like touchable components or scroll views to test it out if they are working as per your requirements. So Draftbit uses Expo Go, which is another framework and is completely based on React Native. And so this is like the welcome screen, and it's how this is going to be look like in your mobile application or a mobile device. And this is a navigation bar which Draftbit automatically adds for you, because we are already using React Navigation, which is a navigation library for creating navigation structures in your React Native apps. So there are different kind of navigation patterns like stacks, tabs, drawer. You might be familiar more with tabs or drawers or stacks as you use your mobile applications in your mobile phone. So by default, the stack pattern is what Draftbit gives you, because the way stack navigation works, basically you going from one screen to another screen, you need to push the screen on top of that previous screen. It's just like how you move around in a web application, like from going from one page to another page by clicking a link or a button. The same pattern goes for stack navigation pattern. So these are the basic view elements. You can also preview the whole application on a real device using Expo Go app from the App Store or Play Store. So Expo Go is basically a client app that gives you the interface of how you can run your app on a real device and simulate it side by side the way when you're developing your app. This is how then insert button where it lets you to add the same components. This is an add button where it lets you to add another screen in your app. Maybe you want to add a different type of screen in your app. For example, you want to add a card screen, and it will generate your screen and it will stack it below all other screens, and you can reuse it, you can edit it and customize it. We'll come back to the custom part later. This is a custom functions panel where you can actually write your own custom functions or custom code. Draftbit doesn't holds you down just to what you are seeing in this builder app. It also allows you to write React Native code in your Draftbit app, such that you are not bound by just what Draftbit gives you and what the limitations of the builder app. Like you can add camera functionalities, or for example, you can add location functionalities. And for that, you need some custom code because you need to handle app permissions, and you need to handle, and you need to test it out on a real device. And it's not yet compatible on testing out on a web browser. So you'll need a custom code for that particular scenario. We have gone through this. The Draftbit also allows you to export code from your app. Like if you are done with building this interface and you might need that code because you want to customize it ahead, it allows you to export the code. Like by clicking the export button, it will generate an React Native app, and it will give you the file, and you can just open it in your code editor. And if you're familiar with React Native, you can edit it down. And at Draftbit, we follow the best React Native practices. So you will see the code is quite aligned towards the current state of React Native, or the way you write code in React Native. That's the view code section. You can also share your Draftbit app among your team members or among other viewers. It will create a new link, and it will render down the whole application inside a web browser. Anyone can scan this QR code just like we did in the builder interface, and they can use it from their Expo app, or if they want to test it out in the web browser. Draftbit renders both iOS and Android interfaces, where you can actually test out your application if you're sharing it with someone. And that's how it would look like on iOS. So you can also use the publish button to deploy your application using the Draftbit interface. Like you can publish your build for on Expo Store, or just generate a PWA out of it. Okay, so let's come to the right-hand panel for this particular screen. So this is what we call style. The properties panel, basically it includes 4 tabs, one for styling, one for configuring your component. Like for example, this button, and I want to change the name of this button. You will do it here. You can change the color of the button background. You can change the color of the label, the name or the text on the button, or you can disable it. There's third panel called data panel. For this component, it doesn't make sound because this particular screen is not actually getting any data. But yeah, you can use your own custom variable names here if you are getting any data from your REST API, which we will see in a bit. The fourth screen is an interaction screen. It is more suitable for touchable components like buttons or any other touchable component, where you can add actions to it. Like from this button, you want to navigate to another screen in your app. You'll do that here. You'll click on navigation. You select the destination of the screen, and like let's test it out in the preview mode if it works or not. It might take some time to generate it. Meanwhile, it is generating. Let's go back to the style screen. The style screens is one of the important screens you'll use. Oh, it generates. If you click it on the button, like the way we added navigation interface to action to it, it will go back. It will navigate to the Discover Book screen. So the styles panel is the main way you can use to lay out your screen. Basically, the way, say, like React Native uses Flexbox algorithm, which is created by developers at Facebook. It's a user interface algorithm where like components or items or elements are aligned in such a way that if the size of the screen changes, it changes with it. You can also control these properties, and it's like kind of a responsive design for your mobile applications, or it also gives you a structure to follow, which is opinionated. And it's good that it is opinionated, because if you're working in a team, or let's say like you have 2 or 3 mobile developers and if you're all using React Native, you need a structure to create elements and to understand how it's going to represent on a mobile screen. So this is just a properties panel that you can go through. Like you can align the items in a row or a column. So like for like generally Flexbox algorithm is also used on web, especially with CSS. And the way your components or elements are aligned is like they are aligned in a row, and like along the x-axis, which is the primary axis. But in React Native, it's reversed, because mobile screens are more vertically aligned. So your primary axis for aligning any component by default is going to be the y-axis instead of the x-axis. And that's the default. Like this screen is on default settings right now, and that's why it's using column. It's called column if you're aligning on the y-axis, and if you're aligning on the row, like on the x-axis, it's called row. And you can check out other properties like adding a width or a height to anything, like for example, this title, or you want to add a margin of 20, you'll just click it and it will represent it for you on the screen. You can also play around, like Draftbit comes with some default typography. Like you can, like typography is basically adding styles to your text or button components. They are like adding headlines, or representing a text in a subtitle manner, or representing a text for a body manner. So Draftbit gives you some predefined values that you can use. It also gives you predefined fonts. Each of these value has a different size, a different line height, and a different letter spacing. You can edit the color of your title depending on your design system of your application. You can change it from here. You can use anything. Like for example, just because we changed it, the font also changes, because by default it was maybe using the strong color. So these are just that's how you style things. Use this panel to style elements or components on your Draftbit app. Another thing that Draftbit allows you right now is to bring your own data from a REST API. So for example, like for example, this screen is made of real-time data that is coming from a REST API called example data. So this is the main idea behind is like to show the book of the day, which is a random book title or book cover going on. This is a scroll view where you see the first 10 books in the list from the API, and these are all the books that are added to the API, which are new to the API. So it's classified as a different list. To add data to your Draftbit app, you'll click on the data button, and then you'll click on the REST API button, and this is the interface to add your own REST API. Here you will add a reference name for your REST API. You can call it anything, but just for your own reference. Here you'll add the base URL of your API. The base URL is basically the URL of your API, which is publicly hosted and accessible to you as a developer of your application, but without any parameters. These are just some settings, or as they call it, some headers to tell the Draftbit that the API is actually giving you the data in JSON format, or if you're requesting data from the API, and like for example, this API is being used currently in this screen. So it's a placeholder API we created at Draftbit to represent and try it out in our applications and test it out this feature. This is the URL of the API base URL, and this is the parameter that is added, like books, to just show the books in this application. And this is how the JSON data looks like. It's an array full of objects, and each object contains different fields, and each field represents a different value. So that's what headers are for. Like, you are requesting data in form of JSON format, and the API is supporting it. Once you create your new REST API, it will show here, like, yeah, it's connected to the Draftbit app. And in the Draftbit app, it will show you the base URL. It will show you which headers you are using. We just saw what they mean. You can always edit it by clicking the Edit Service button. And endpoints are the individual API URLs that you send the request from your app to fetch some kind of data or some kind of request. Like a request can be like an HTTP request can be divided into 4 or 5 parts. For example, get is to fetch the data from the API. Then there is a post request where you actually add the data to your database using that API endpoint. Then there is put or patch, which is used to update a particular existing object of data. And then there is delete, which basically deletes the data from the database. So you can think of like an API is the connection between your database and your application, and it's like the middle person who's telling the database what to do by receiving the requests. And the API interface is basically built to accept multiple requests from multiple sources. For example, you can use the same API in your mobile app as well as your web application. And this is how, like, for example, on this page, we are using the newly added books API. So Draftbit allows you to select the kind of the HTTP method you want to use. Like, for example, you want to fetch an API, you just click on get. You have a base URL and add it there. This is where you add parameters. Like, for example, when I show you the books JSON data, there was this URL. This is the parameter, and this is the additional parameter to this URL, and it is telling that you just fetch all the books that are listed on page 1 of the API. And you can also test it out here to see if the data is coming or not. If it's not coming, there's some error either in your API or from your end as a developer to check your URL again. But if it's working, that's fine. You can save it, you can close it, and you are ready to use it in your application. So to use data in your application, you create for example, this newly added books list has this fetch component. It's a custom component by Draftbit that allows you to add, like, select your Draftbit service name and then select which endpoint you want to fetch or the kind of request you want to send to your API. For example, this is sending the books that are newly added, and you can configure it further if you want to. For some screens or in some scenarios, like if you're sending a post request, you will probably want to send through a variable or a parameter name. Then you can also preview here what kind of data you're getting and if it's the right data to show it in a particular section. That's all about fetching data from your Draftbit app. And this is again fetching the data from your REST API and displaying it in a manner that it's a kind of a detail screen when you click on a book. That's all. That's how that's the internals of the Draftbit app. Lastly, like, let's go through the custom code section. Like, you can add your own custom functions. It uses React Native. There is no any particular Draftbit wrapper around it. It just uses plain React Native packages. You can add if you're into React Native, you can add your own custom component here to create some new functionality, which is not possible or not supported by Draftbit, and you need a very highly custom functionality. For example, adding camera to your Draftbit app, accessing camera of a device, and then uploading, like taking pictures from it and then uploading it to a third-party service or your own API. This is where you'll do that kind of functionalities. Apart from that, I'll love if you will want to explore or this builder interface, or if you have any questions, it would be lovely for me to answer right now.
Sir, there is a question from Hemant. Should I read it out?
Oh no, I can see it now.
Okay, sir.
So your question, like Hemant, thank you for this question. Your first question is that from the perspective of building backend based projects, are there? Yeah, there are no code cons. Like for example, no code applications has they like hold you down to a certain point. Like they cannot provide you custom functionalities or custom usage. Like if you want to really customize something. But for backend based projects, like there are things like backendless or Bubble or Webflow CMS, which gives you an interface to create your own backend without actually writing code. So they give you the interface of creating REST APIs, and you can actually use it to actually bring data in your Draftbit app. And the cons of that would be like you are using their service to host your REST API, and you will be actually paying some amount of cost for hosting that service. But even if you create your own REST API, you are eventually going to host it somewhere, and you will be paying for that service too. So I don't see it really as a con. I see it like it's kind of a different aspect of building APIs, which is quite like if you're working in a small team and you want to focus on your application rather than worrying about how to write code and how to create this API from writing code, you probably want to work with some backend-less infrastructure like backend-less Firebase or as I mentioned, Webflow CMS. So I'll take your second question, Hemant. So yeah, we are not exactly building an interface for in Draftbit to create your own backend. So Draftbit is just like a visual tool where you can create your own front end side of the application, and you are not bound just by the designing part of your application. You can create your functionalities and interactions between different components. Draftbit is currently at Draftbit we are currently bringing on Firebase, which is one of the most requested feature. So using Firebase, like for example, you can bring your authentication and you can bring your own data from Firebase database, Firestore. But Draftbit is not going to give you a functionality of creating your own backend inside Draftbit. You'll still need a hosting of your own API of your own backend. I don't know if it answers your question, but let me know. Oh, there is another question from Shivanshu. Yeah, the build, Shivanshu, to your answer to your question is, yeah, the build code is definitely available after the compilation. If you want to manually edit the code, you will click on the screen, you'll click on the export app uh, button, and you'll download a zip file, which is basically gives you an Expo React Native app, and you can actually just open it in your code editor, install the packages that are required from npm or yarn, and that's like just run it in your own development environment and manually edit or do whatever you want to do with your application. Uh, Harsha has a question like if Draftbit allows you to collaborate with others. Yeah, you can use Draftbit to collaborate with your own teammates. So you'll have to like create your own uh, personal accounts and then you can connect with it. If you want like more information on that, or if it's not working for you, just send us an email at help@draftbit.com, or just go to our community and you can ask question there. Any kind of question will be able to happy to help you. Like this is the panel for uh, like directly asking questions from people who are working at Draftbit.
Okay, so I don't think there are any more questions. Are we good to conclude the event?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for your wise words, sir. Thank you for sparing up some time and sharing up some knowledgeable words with us. And on this insightful note, we conclude the session. Thank you, everyone who has joined us and helped us to make this event a success.
I think that, there are like two more questions. Like you want me to like I can answer them right now if you want.
Yeah, yeah, sir. Please go ahead. No problem.
Shivanshu has a question like how efficient would you consider the compilation from your graphical user interface to code compared to a developer manually coding a React Native app? Maybe measure of comparison being lines of code or complexity of code. So the internal interface of writing code using a Draftbit app is 100% similar to how would you write a React Native app. So there is no difference in that because Draftbit is using the same elements as React Native. Uh, for example, like we saw the styles properties panel, and it's just using the same algorithm like you would do in React Native for creating styles for your components. Uh, Flexbox, and we don't like Draftbit doesn't puts any kind of wrapper, or it doesn't put any kind of implication on its own. So, like for example, if you see this code, this is React, like how you would write code in your React Native and Expo app. You'll fetch a couple of components from your React Native. If you want to use any Expo library package, you will do that. Uh, this is just React code, like creating custom functions and creating a component using props. This is just basic React code. There's like nothing going on that Draftbit uh, puts on its own. So uh, like there's no difference between like adding a manual code from a React Native app. The only difference comes when you are you want to create some custom functionalities like adding a camera or adding a location, which is quite would be customized based on your the design of your app or the functionality you want to use, because those are two major areas or features in your app, and you can use it in any way. Uh, the lines of code is like each component is like each screen is based on a different component. creates a separate component for your app, and it's just like how you would write a React Native app. You would get the same amount of lines of code. So there's no added complexity in that area. Uh, so the whole idea of using a no-code tool like Draftbit is to reduce your development time and focus on the elements of your applications and functionalities and push it out as early as possible from a developer team point of view. It also, like, you don't have to create a React Native app from scratch, and you don't have to write components from scratch. You can actually like visualize why you are creating it, so it does reduce your development time uh, by some amount, and it also gives you a kickstart on basically how you can like save time and effort in that area. I hope this answers your question, Shivanshu. I don't know. Let me know. There's another question which says that do you see big enterprises using Draftbit or similar tools for internal tools? It depends on the use case. Like, as I was mentioning in the previous question, like if your development team is completely oriented towards uh, pushing the final result, because that's the end user way, like they care about the final result. They don't care about uh, which programming language are you using to write code or which framework you are using to write code. They just care about the end result, which end of the day is what we also want as a developer. So uh, if a enterprise like Draftbit is not just a tool for people who don't know how to code, or people who have a vague idea of, or there are limitations in their knowledge of how to code. It's also a tool for developers that we are trying to aim, because a lot of React Native developers and expert developers uh, go through this process of bootstrapping an app, and it is quite time consuming. I would say, like, I myself as a React Native developer, and I know like how much time I've spent on starting a new project or a new app, and then sharing the code with a teammate, and then they'll bootstrap that same application project in their own developer environment. So it's like time consuming for everyone, effort consuming for everyone. It increases your cost of your application. It slows you down basically to some extent. So using Draftbit eliminates that kind of uh, problem, or like it saves you, like it helps you focus on those areas where you actually want to focus on.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we can just wait for a minute to see if there are any more questions remaining. Okay, sir, I think we are good to go. So thank you for your time. The event was truly insightful. I hope a lot of us has learned something new from it. And attendees, they can exit the event now.
So thank you so much for having me. If you have any questions, just hit at Draftbit on Twitter, on the community at .draftbit.com, and then I'll be happy to help.
Thank you, sir.